Hello and welcome to my review of the Tyranid Trygon. I absolutely love this model. I think it's just awesome. It's so cool. I've wanted one ever since it came out on Forge World in resin, and then they eventually chose to make it into plastic. So I've wanted one for years, but never could find the time to start up a Tyranid force, Tyranid army. And I'm so pleased I've done so because I finally got my hands on one. I'm really chuffed. Now, one of these separately will cost you £36. If you don't have a Broodlord already, then I'd recommend you rush out and get the new Start Collecting set, because it comes with a Trigon or Trigon Prime you can turn this into, or a Morlock, and it comes with 8 Gene Stealers and a Broodlord. So it's a great set. My review will be coming up in a few days' time, so I hope you stay tuned for that. But it really is a fantastic kit. I had a lot of fun building it. It doesn't take very long at all. It's not as sort of, well, scary, no, it's not as sort of intimidating as I thought it would be. It's just got this main tail part and a body that's really easy to glue. The face is easy to construct, and all of these talons are, you know, a little bit fiddly, but this whole model isn't as fiddly as like a Wraith Lord. Nowhere near. It's quite straightforward to build in steps, and you'll do it in, you know, a couple of hours or so. Doesn't take too long. I know a lot of people, even the box puts it with this like rattle on the tail, but I've gone for this pincer kind of tail. I think it looks cooler, looks better, but there you go. So if we just look at some of the detail, I really like the head and the jaws and these extra mandibles, and I love these little extra spiky bits that are running along it, and just the talons look immense and very sort of intimidating. I really like the armoured sort of carapace as well, like it's sort of moving about, and these sort of chimneys. I'm really fascinated by this model. I think it's incredible. I know it's been out for quite a while now, but yeah, I can't wait to sort of spray it and put it in my sort of Tyranid colours that I've been working on. So there you go, that is the Trygon. Let's do some size comparisons then. So it is a big creature in the Tyranid force. So I've got another big creature to compare it to, and that is the Hive Tyrant. It is actually bigger than a Hive Tyrant. I mean, look at that, it's huge. It could, you know, chomp the head off a Hive Tyrant. The head is massive, and bigger than a Space Marine actually. Could it swallow a Space Marine whole? I don't know, but it is huge. It's taller than this Hive Tyrant or Flyrant, as people have called it. You know, yes, it doesn't have the wings to give it that presence, but just look at it in comparison, the base and everything. It's just fantastic. It's just such a bigger sort of creature. So that's one of my biggest other Tyranid creatures I've got. I've also got a Carnifex right here, and it makes the Carnifex look tiny, really tiny actually. But Carnifex is a tried and tested, and they're pretty decent. So that's the Carnifex, and then going a little bit smaller, got a Broodlord. So it just shows you the size of it compared to a Broodlord. Broodlord's not tiny, and he is leaping off a Spore Chimney or whatever it is. And then next to a Gene Stealer and a Warrior. So definitely a great centerpiece, another big monstrous type of creature. I really do like the Tyranid big creatures, much more than like the tiny, like little ones like the Hormagaunts and Termagants and the Gene Stealers and stuff. I mean, Gene Stealers are nice, but I much prefer these bigger sort of creepy crawlies. Next to a Mini Marine, a Space Marine. It's going to absolutely dwarf a Space Marine. Just, this thing is huge compared to him. You can even have him sort of in there, just now. He's nice and safe there, using the Trygon as a bit of cover, movable cover. That'll work. So yeah, I just thought I'd do that size comparison. That it is a big creature, although it's £36. It is a big model. So now this is my part of the review where I'll just go through all of the Trygon's rules. I won't go through the Trigon Prime's rules and the Morlock's rules, you know, they're complete rules, but I will sort of go through a little bit of a of a comparison with those other two, because they are separate entries in the new 8th edition codex. Now the Trygon is a heavy support choice. There's lots of heavy support choices in the Tyranid codex. I thought there'd be a lot more fast attack choices, but I'd probably say the heavy support section is probably my favourite section in the book. Everything from a Exocrine to a Toxocrine to a Tyrannofex, to a Carnifex, lots of different Carnifexes, to Thornbacks, Morlocks, Trigons, Trigon Primes. There's a lot of big sort of creatures and things. So back onto the Trygon then. It's a power level of 9. Its points cost is 108 points base. Then you've got to buy all of its little extra things and so on. So 100 points is really relatively cheap actually at those 100 points. Some of its characteristics do change as it suffers damage. It has 12 wounds, but when it drops between 7 and 12, its movement is 9 inches, weapon skill 3+, and ballistic skill 4+. 4 to 6 wounds, its movement is 7 inches, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 5+. And then finally, when it's only got 1 to 3 wounds, its movement is very slow, 5 inches, weapon skill 5+, and ballistic skill 6+. So actually with this creature, when it's almost close to death, it's really going to be slow. It's not going to be wanting to hit anything or shoot at anything. It's going to be really, damaged, which sort of makes sense in a way. Other than on like creatures that get berserk, the more sort of damage they take. Strength is 7. I think it was 6 in the previous codex. Toughness is 6. 12 wounds, as I say. 6 attacks though. Leadership 7 and a save of 3+. Doesn't have an invulnerable save, which kind of sucks. But then again, it is a big creature. It's not a synapse creature or anything like that, which sort of sucks as well. So it is going to get shot at with its toughness 6, and those 12 wounds will peel away. But it does have that nice 3+ save. It's armed with a bioelectric pulse, 3 pairs of massive scything talons, and a toxin spike. The bioelectric pulse is a range 12-inch. Assault 6, Strength 5, AP 0, Damage 1 weapon. So it's just like little electric pulse, it just fires that out of it. So 6 shots though, it's quite good. The 3 tails, you've got a biostatic rattle, which is Strength user, AP -1 and Damage 1. And each time a bearer fights, it can make 1 attack with a weapon. And if the unit suffers any unsaved wounds, you add 1 to any morale test they take until the end of the turn. The prehensile pincer tail is the one I've equipped it with, and that's just 1 extra attack, but it's damage D3, so that's quite cool. And then the toxin spike is strength 1, but it always wounds on a 2+. So you get that extra attack, and it wounds on the 2+. You got a damage of D3. So against vehicles, obviously you've got the strength 1, but it's saying that on any other unit, it's going to be a 2+ to wound. So that's why I've gone for the prehensile, because it means it can attack vehicles at its strength of 7 if I wish it to. And then its main melee weapons, which are those massive scything talons. Strength of users, that's 7, AP -3, so that's awesome, and its damage is D6. You can also re-roll hit rolls of a 1 for the weapon, and if it has more than 1 pair of massive scything talons, it can make 1 additional attack with the weapon each time it fights. Now, I don't know whether that means you get 3 more attacks on it, or whether the attack profile is included. You're going to have to help me out in the comments. I'd say yes. I'd say it's got 6 attacks normally. If it has more than 1, then you're going to get an additional attack each time it fights. So that's what I would say. I would say yes, it would have more attacks that way. War gear options, you can swap that toxin spike and biostatic rattle with a prehensile pincer tail. And you can also give it toxin sacs and or adrenal glands, so that's pretty cool. It's got the abilities Instinctive Behavior. Now I've probably mentioned this in another video, but because it's sort of a synapse creature, that means that Instinctive Behavior, unless a high fleet unit with the ability is within 24 inches of any friendly high fleet synapse unit, you subtract 1 from any hit rolls made for it when shooting any target other than the nearest visible enemy unit, and you must subtract 2 from its charge roll if it declares a charge against any unit other than the nearest enemy unit. So that's not as debilitating as it used to be. It's still pretty bad, subtracting 1 for hit rolls, especially if it's got 6 shots. and you want to hit on the 4+, I mean hitting on 5+ is going to suck. So it's even more of a reason to get a Synapse unit closer to him, and also reducing that charge roll by 2 is pretty poor, but it's nowhere near as debilitating as it was in the last edition. Like a lot of the sort of monsters, it's got Death Throws ability, so if it was reduced to 0 wounds, you roll a d6, and on a 6 it lashes out, and each unit within 3 inches suffers d3 mortal wounds. And then finally, one of the main reasons why you'd go for this unit is the Subterranean Assault. During the deployment, you can set up a Trigon underground instead of placing it on the battlefield. At the same time, you can set up a High Fleet troops unit in the Trigon's tunnel. So you're basically getting... It can deep strike. You don't need to buy a Tyrannocyte or a drop pod or anything like that for it. Yeah, can you imagine one of these in a drop pod? Anyway, wrapped around a drop pod maybe. You're getting a drop pod basically for free because you can put a troops unit in the Trigon's tunnel. That could be warriors. You could put warriors in there. You could put Gene Stealers in there. And at the end of the movement phase, you can set the Trigon up anywhere on the battlefield that's more than 9 inches away from enemy models. And then you can also set the other unit that's in the tunnel at the same time, but within 3 inches of the Trigon, and again, more than 9 inches away from the models. But however, there is a bit of a downside. Any models that you can't place in this way are destroyed. I don't know how they're destroyed. It doesn't really go on to explain that, because surely they would just use a successful hole that something else has come out of. I would have thought that the hole that the Trigon makes would be pretty large, and they'd have no issues following him out of that hole, but well, it is what it is. Now let's compare him to a Trigon Prime. Now you're only paying 1 more power point, so you get power point 10, and you're paying some more points for him, but with that you are getting a much better leadership at leadership 9. You're getting the same wounds, same attacks, same movement, everything like that. But its range weapon is better. It has a bioelectric pulse with containment spines. So same range, but you're getting 12 shots instead of the 6. It's more or less a Psyker then, because it's got Shadow in the Warp and Synapse. So that's pretty awesome. So, and it's still got the Subterranean Assault. So for an extra 1 power point, it's probably worth choosing Trigon Prime, because you're getting more shots, same everything else, but you're ditching the Instinctive Behavior, and you're basically getting a Synapse creature that can deploy anywhere on the battlefield. Now, you deploy this Trigon Prime in the middle of the battlefield where there's a load of troops or other monsters and creatures that are about to fall out of your other Synapse creatures' range. Even though it's not as debilitating as I've gone on to say before, then you're getting an instant another bubble just pop up. That you can use for the sort of Synapse effect. So that might well be worth it for that. And again, you can still have a load of troops pop out of the hole that he makes too. So it might be worth going for the Trigon Prime over the Trigon, just for those extra points and things. The other creature, which I still would love to get because it's a fantastic looking model, is the Morlock. Now this is cheaper than both the Trigon and the Trigon Prime. Its power level is 6 instead of 9 or 10. It's got the same stats as a Trigon, but it's got 1 more attack. And instead of the massive scything talons, it's only got the little ones, the scything talons they call it, which instead of damage D6 and AP -3, it's only AP 0 and damage 1. So you're getting a huge knockback in terms of, although you're getting more attacks, you're getting a huge knockback in the armor penetration and the damage that those Scything Talons do. But what you do get is distendable jaws, which you're getting a strength user, AP -3 and damage D6. So you are getting 1 attack with the jaws that can, give you, D6 damage. But the main reason you'd choose that one is the Terror from the Deep, which basically when the Morlock pops up, within 2 inches of it, you can pop up a Morlock 2 inches away from an enemy model instead of 9 inches, and then D6 for each enemy unit within 2 inches of it, On a 2 and 3 it's 1 mortal wound, 4 or 5 it's D3, and on a 6 it's 3 mortal wounds. So that's the reason why you choose a Morlock, it's so that it can pop up nice and close. For some reason the hole he makes isn't as big as the Trygon for whatever reason, which is odd, and he can't take another unit with him. It sort of makes sense because if he's popping up at the same time as the other units, you don't want him to giving your other units mortal wounds, if that makes sense. So you're getting him for him popping up, creating loads of mortal wounds on enemies, and then he is probably gonna get shot to pieces. However, he can burrow. If he's not shot up by the beginning of your next movement phase and he's not within 1 inch of an enemy unit, he can basically burrow, and you can remove it from the battlefield, and then he could pop up of your next turn, not within the same. So he can't at the beginning of movement burrow down and then at the end of your movement burrow back up. It has to be the next turn that he could then burrow back up. So that's quite horrific, him popping up kind of like a whack-a-mole, but a whack-a-morlock, popping up all around the battlefield willy-nilly, all around the battlefield in key places, causing loads of mortal wounds, burrowing back down and then popping up somewhere else. I think that's incredible. And if you have 2 of them, imagine that. That's just going to play havoc with your enemy. They're going to pump so much firepower into it if they can when it pops up out of the ground. And that's all I really wanted to say about the Trigon and the Trigon Prime and the Morlock. I would love to get a Morlock at some point, definitely, because I really like the model itself. I love the fact that he's very sort of snake looking, very centipede looking with these little claws, very alien looking, you know, with this big sort of distended jaw and head with these big scything talons. Incredible model, and the rules are really neat too. You can use him as like a free sort of drop pod for your troops. You can use him to pop up, and then he can just pop up and shoot. There's 6 shots or 12 if you have him as a prime. There's abilities there for having him as a prime with the synapse ability. But even if you just go down the normal Trigon route, you're still going to be getting a lot of sort of model for your point. Yes, his toughness is only 6, and yes, he's only got 12 wounds, but he can dish out a fair bit of damage and bring a load of troops with him. Be prepared that once he pops up out of the ground, he's going to be a little bit vulnerable, both if he's without synapse support. So he's a model that you've really got to understand the tactics and get a real-time view of the battlefield of what's going on to use him effectively. You don't want it to pop him up too close to enemies. You don't want him to pop him up and get caught up in crossfire or get pinned down. Tactics for the other side is you've got to set up those firing lines and make sure your weaker units are supported, just in case one of these things does pop up and bring some friends with him. Anyway, what do you guys think? What are your most sort of memorable experiences with either the Trigon Prime or Morlock? Please do, as ever, put it down in the comments below. Very interested to hear your thoughts. I think it's a fantastic model. Great that you get him in this Start Collecting set, and I was really hoping that you would get him in this set. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. For the Norn Queen.